There comes a moment in every person's life when the noise fades. The voices that once guided you go silent. The applause that once reassured you disappears. And you find yourself standing in a kind of stillness you did not choose. It is in that stillness that the real journey begins. Carl Jung believed that the human soul grows not through comfort, but through confrontation, through facing the truth of who we are when there is no one left to mirror us. When no one believes in you, the world is quietly handing you a test. Will you fall into despair, or will you discover the strength that was waiting, hidden beneath dependence? Most people are never truly alone with themselves. They move from distraction to distraction, seeking evidence of their worth in other people's eyes. But Jung understood that there is a form of aloneness that is sacred, the solitude that strips away illusion and reveals the unshakable core of the self. He once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." That sentence is not about ego, it is about courage. Because when you stand in solitude, you are forced to confront every shadow, every insecurity, every hidden doubt that once hid beneath social noise. It is here, in the silence of being unseen, that you meet the real you. And that is where transformation begins. Jung called this process individuation, the unfolding of the authentic self through the tension of opposites. When the world does not believe in you, it creates that tension between outer rejection and inner truth. The ego feels pain, but the soul senses opportunity. It is through this contrast that strength, independence, and clarity are born. To rise when no one believes in you is not about defiance. It is not rebellion against others. It is the realization that belief does not need witnesses. It is a quiet evolution, an internal awakening that says, "I no longer need you to see me, to know that I exist." The mind craves recognition, but the self requires solitude. Solitude, Jung said, is the birthplace of meaning. Without it, the voice of the soul remains drowned by the crowd's expectations. If you have ever felt invisible, if you have ever watched your dreams dissolve in the indifference of others, know that this invisibility can become your greatest ally. Because the moment you are unseen, you are free to become who you truly are. To believe in yourself when no one else does is not arrogance, it is alignment. It is the decision to side with your inner world against the doubt of the outer one. That decision, repeated again and again, becomes your foundation. It is how resilience is born. Jung wrote that. What we resist persists. When you resist loneliness, when you fight against rejection, you only deepen their hold on you. But when you turn toward them, when you ask, "What are you here to teach me?" they begin to transform. Loneliness becomes insight. Doubt becomes discipline. Rejection becomes redirection. And slowly, your center of gravity shifts from the external to the internal. You stop waiting for validation, and start listening for truth. You stop searching for approval, and start cultivating purpose. This is what Jung meant when he said that individuation is not becoming perfect, but becoming whole. You begin to realize that solitude is not emptiness, it is space. Space to grow, to think, to dream without interference. And in that space, you begin to build something unshakable. A self that no longer depends on belief, but simply is. When no one believes in you, you are given a sacred chance, the chance to learn belief from within. It is the quiet kind of faith, the kind that does not need witnesses, the kind that endures long after the noise of the world fades away. Loneliness is one of the most misunderstood experiences in the human condition. People run from it as if it were a sickness, a symptom of being unwanted, unworthy, unlovable. But Carl Jung saw loneliness differently. He saw it as a teacher, a difficult, demanding one, but a teacher nonetheless. He believed that loneliness is not the absence of people, but the absence of understanding. You can stand in a crowded room and still feel it pressing against your chest. Because what you long for is not company, but connection, the kind of connection that touches the soul and says, "I see you." When that connection is missing, when the world fails to mirror your essence, you are left alone with yourself. And that, Jung said, is where the work begins. For most, this encounter with loneliness feels unbearable. The silence seems too loud. The emptiness feels endless. But beneath that surface suffering lies something sacred, the invitation to build a relationship with the only companion you will have for life, yourself. Jung often warned that the modern person is alienated not from society, but from their own soul. We distract ourselves with endless activity because we fear what might surface in stillness. We chase validation because we dread discovering that our inner world feels hollow. But the truth is that loneliness only hurts because it exposes the distance between who we are and who we pretend to be. The moment you stop running, the moment you sit with the silence, something begins to shift. You start to notice your own thoughts with curiosity rather than fear. You realize how often you have betrayed your own needs in order to be accepted. And in that realization, the silence becomes less of an enemy and more of a mirror. In solitude, every mask falls away. You can no longer perform or please. There is no one to impress, no one to disappoint. What remains is the raw material of the self, uncertain, imperfect, but real. This confrontation with the real self is what Jung called shadow work. The shadow is everything within you that you've been told not to be, the anger you suppressed, the envy you denied, the desires you hid. Loneliness brings the shadow forward because, without distraction, you finally hear its voice. And though that voice is uncomfortable, it is also a key to wholeness. Because until you make peace with what you've buried, you will always feel divided, torn between the person you are and the person you present. The mistake most people make is believing that the end of loneliness comes from being found by someone else. But Jung knew the truth. Loneliness ends when you find yourself. When you begin to understand your own inner landscape, your fears, your gifts, your contradictions, you no longer feel like a stranger in your own soul. You become your own witness. And then something remarkable happens. What once felt like isolation begins to feel like clarity. The silence that once frightened you begins to speak in new languages. You hear intuition, creativity, insight, voices that were drowned out by noise. You begin to sense that solitude was never meant to be punishment, but preparation. Preparation for authenticity, for depth, for freedom. When you start to understand your loneliness, it transforms into solitude, and solitude is fertile. It gives birth to thought, imagination, strength. It allows you to grow roots that reach into the unseen parts of your being. And the deeper those roots go, the less external validation can shake you. The greatest paradox Jung revealed is that strength is not found in the presence of others, but in their absence. You do not learn courage when surrounded by comfort. You learn it when standing alone, hearing only the echo of your own heartbeat, and still choosing to move forward. Each time you face that moment, the night when no one calls, the day when no one understands, you grow a little more invincible. Loneliness tests you, but it also reveals you. It shows you the edges of your endurance, and it whispers, "This too will pass." And when it does, you will realize that you have built something no one can take away, an inner strength born from stillness. Jung once wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." That sentence captures the essence of why solitude matters. It is the only place where you can learn to communicate with your own soul. And once you learn that language, you are never truly alone again. Because loneliness, when understood, becomes intimacy, the deepest kind, the one between you and the silent, eternal part of yourself that no one else can touch. There comes a point in every person's life when they realize that the comfort they've been seeking from others cannot reach the places that hurt the most. It's not because people are unkind or unwilling, it's because no one can truly feel your experience from the inside. They can listen, they can care, they can try to understand, but they cannot live within the same skin that carries your memories, your fears, your unseen weight. And that is why, as Jung understood, emotional independence is not a luxury. It is the foundation of a stable, mature mind. We are conditioned, from childhood, to seek comfort externally. A parent soothes the child. A friend reassures us when we're scared. A lover promises to stay through our pain. And for a time, these moments feel enough, as though the presence of another can dissolve the ache within us. But inevitably, the day comes when that comfort is absent. When no one answers the phone. When no one says, "I understand." And in that silence, the old patterns collapse. We feel abandoned, rejected, forgotten. But what's really happening is that we are being invited to grow. To stop seeking emotional comfort from others is not to reject connection. It is to reclaim responsibility for your own peace. It is to understand that comfort which depends on others will always be fragile, always one misunderstanding, one distance, one silence away from crumbling. Real strength begins when you learn to soothe yourself, to hold your own pain as patiently as a mother would hold her child. It is the art of self-parenting, something Jung saw as essential for individuation, the process of becoming whole. Most people never learn this art because they mistake self-soothing for isolation. They think it means cutting people off or refusing help. But it is not that. It is learning to draw comfort from within first so that when love from others arrives, it becomes a gift, not a lifeline. It is the difference between drinking water because you are thirsty and sharing a cup because you are full. When you depend entirely on others to regulate your emotions, you remain a child, no matter your age. Your peace becomes conditional. It belongs to the world's approval. One harsh word, one moment of neglect, and you collapse. But when you begin to regulate your emotions from within, by breathing, by understanding your thoughts, by meeting your own needs, your peace becomes unconditional. You no longer beg the world to treat you gently, because you have learned to treat yourself gently. Jung wrote extensively about the danger of projection, how we project our unmet needs onto others. We hope a partner will heal the wound our parents left. We expect a friend to fill the emptiness that our own silence reveals. But projection always ends in disappointment, because the other person is never the image we create in our mind. They are human, limited, flawed, transient. And when they fail to meet the ideal, we feel betrayed. But the truth is, they were never responsible for carrying that burden. The responsibility was always ours. The moment you reclaim that responsibility, you begin to build a new kind of resilience, one that no absence can destroy. You stop chasing reassurance and start building inner trust. You stop asking, "Do they care about me?" and start asking, "Do I care about myself enough to stay calm in uncertainty?" You realize that you can survive discomfort without collapsing. That you can feel sadness, fear, or rejection, and still remain intact. And that realization is liberation. Self-soothing is not a technique, it's a way of being. It means becoming both the comforter and the comforted. It means that when your mind begins to spiral, you whisper inwardly, "It's all right. I'm here. We'll get through this." That simple act, speaking to yourself with compassion, begins to rewrite the neural pathways of dependence. You stop waiting for the world to come and rescue you, because you've already learned how to sit in the fire and not burn. When Jung spoke of the self, with a capital S, he was describing this deeper center of being, the part that remains steady while the rest of life rises and falls. It is this self that you must learn to return to. Every time someone disappoints you, every time you feel unseen, the invitation is the same: return home. Not to a person, but to your own consciousness. Over time, you begin to notice the shift. Emotional storms still come, rejection still hurts, loss still aches, but your relationship to the pain changes. Instead of reacting, you observe. Instead of pleading for rescue, you breathe. Instead of collapsing into despair, you find stillness in the eye of the storm. You begin to realize that nothing outside you has power over your peace unless you hand it over. That is emotional maturity. It's not about being stoic or cold. It's about being so grounded within yourself that love becomes a choice, not a need. So that when others offer you warmth, it amplifies what's already there. It does not replace it. Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." That irritation, that craving for someone to fill our emptiness, those are signals, pointing us back inward. They say, "Look here. This is where you've forgotten yourself." And once you look, really look, you realize that all along, the comfort you sought from the world was an echo of the comfort you were meant to give yourself. You were not abandoned. You were being shown where to return. One of the most persistent traps of the human mind is the tendency to complain. Jung understood that complaining is more than idle dissatisfaction. It is a way of handing over power. Every grievance spoken aloud, every resentment nursed, is a subtle surrender to forces outside yourself. It is the language of the victim ego, a whisper that says, I am helpless, I am owed, I cannot rise alone. When we complain, we position ourselves as passive observers of life rather than active participants. We wait for circumstances to change, for someone else to intervene, for fortune to finally notice us. But Jung's psychology teaches us that the moment we externalize our power, we lose it. The world cannot rescue you, because your strength was never meant to reside there. It has always been within. Complaining also keeps us tethered to suffering. Each word of lamentation is a reminder of what is lacking, a reinforcement of inadequacy. Instead of looking inward, we fix our gaze outward, endlessly cataloging the injustices, the misunderstandings, the disappointments. And while the mind believes it is finding relief through expression, it is actually strengthening the chains of dependency. The victim ego thrives on external blame. It says, if only they had done this. If only life were different. If only someone saw me. Jung recognized that this pattern is seductive because it avoids responsibility. To claim your power, to rise alone, you must first recognize the allure of the victim. You must understand that the narrative of helplessness is a story you tell yourself, and only you have the pen. True growth begins when we stop complaining, not because life is perfect, but because we choose to reclaim agency. To observe reality without judgment, to note the obstacles without surrender, and to act despite them, this is the language of the empowered self. Each complaint replaced with observation, each grievance replaced with inquiry, begins to shift the inner landscape from passivity to presence. Jung often spoke of individuation as the process of integrating opposites. In this case, the opposite of the victim ego is the sovereign ego, the part of us that takes full responsibility for our experience. By noticing the patterns that lead to complaining, by seeing where we hand our power to others, we begin to reclaim it. We stop asking the world to bend to our expectations and start asking ourselves, how will I act within this moment? How will I rise despite the circumstances? Silence is one of the most powerful antidotes to complaint. When we stop narrating our victimhood, we allow space for reflection, insight, and creativity. We begin to see the subtle ways in which life invites us to strength rather than resistance. We notice that obstacles are not punishments but opportunities, tests not of luck, but of inner resourcefulness. Jung believed that suffering, when approached consciously, becomes transformative. Complaining obscures this transformation because it keeps us focused on pain rather than potential. When we stop voicing our grievances, we do not deny reality. We acknowledge it fully, and then we choose action. We choose growth. We choose to rise even when no one is there to witness it. The empowered self does not seek validation through lamentation. It learns to confront discomfort without needing rescue. It understands that the world may be indifferent, yet it remains steadfast. By stopping the habit of complaining, we shift from reactive to proactive, from dependent to independent, from a life measured by others' acknowledgement to a life measured by self-integrity. Every moment you refrain from complaint is a declaration. I am capable. I am responsible. I am enough. Jung's psychology is full of these paradoxes. You cannot rise by demanding the world change. You rise by transforming yourself. You cannot be heard if you cannot first listen to yourself. And by relinquishing the victim ego, you reclaim the language of power, the quiet authority of someone who no longer waits for permission to exist fully. The path is not easy, nor is it instantaneous. It requires patience, reflection, and courage. But the reward is profound. A mind no longer bound by grievance. A spirit no longer dependent on the approval or understanding of others. A life no longer interrupted by the constant echo of, "Why me?" You begin to live from the center rather than the edges, from a place that is unshakable, unseen by the crowd, yet radiant in its quiet certainty. The journey toward rising when no one believes in you reaches a pivotal turning point when you realize that validation from others is fleeting, conditional, and often unreliable. Carl Jung understood that relying on external approval is like building a house on sand. No matter how grand, it will shift, crumble, or disappear when the tides change. To rise fully, you must anchor yourself within. You must become your own source of validation. Most people measure their worth against the perception of others. They count likes, compliments, acknowledgments, or applause as proof that they matter. But no external measure can ever capture the depth of your being. The world may see fragments, your actions, your words, your appearance, but it cannot know the vast, unseen interior of your consciousness. No one else can verify the quiet strength that pulses beneath the surface. Only you can. Becoming self-validating does not mean you cease to care for others. It does not require arrogance, superiority, or isolation. It is a quiet acknowledgement that your experience, your effort, your choices, are worthy simply because they are yours. When you validate yourself, you stop asking the world to perform a service it cannot offer, the recognition of your intrinsic value. You stop depending on external approval and begin to inhabit your own approval fully. Jung wrote about the individuation process as the journey toward wholeness. A key part of this journey is recognizing that your worth is not fragmented across relationships or social feedback. When you internalize validation, you consolidate your selfhood. You no longer flinch at silence, criticism, or neglect. You no longer need applause to feel complete. You know your own truth, and that knowledge becomes your compass, your shield, your fuel. The mind often rebels against this notion because it is accustomed to receiving affirmation from others. It fears solitude, rejection, and invisibility. But the moment you accept that external validation is optional, that your sense of self does not depend on mirrors, a profound freedom emerges. You begin to act from conviction rather than expectation. You speak, create, and live from the center of your being. Your choices become authentic because they are guided not by approval, but by inner knowing. Self-validation also transforms failure. When you rely solely on others, setbacks sting, disappointment lingers, and every misstep feels catastrophic. But when your sense of worth is rooted in your own acknowledgement, failure becomes data rather than judgment. It is an observation, a signal to adjust, learn, and proceed, not a verdict on your existence. The criticism of the world loses its power, because your own recognition carries greater weight. Jung emphasized the importance of conscious self-reflection. Through careful attention to your thoughts, emotions, and intentions, you cultivate a dialogue with yourself. You learn to say, "I see you. I respect your effort. I acknowledge your growth." This internal dialogue does not replace compassion for others, but it fortifies your foundation so that when the outer world fails to affirm you, you remain steady. Becoming your own source of validation also fosters courage. When you know that your worth is inherent, you can act boldly, take risks, and pursue your path with clarity. You are no longer limited by fear of judgment, misunderstanding, or ridicule. Every decision becomes an expression of integrity rather than a performance designed to appease the crowd. And in that integrity, your presence radiates confidence, not arrogance, a quiet light that draws others naturally, without dependence. Jung's teachings remind us that this inner validation is both protective and generative. It protects because it shields your self-esteem from the whims of the world. It generates because it enables you to create, love, and contribute without expectation. You are free to engage with life fully, yet remain grounded in the certainty of your own value. To rise when no one believes in you, you must cultivate this inner affirmation. It is not a single act but a lifelong practice, observing yourself without judgment, celebrating small victories, acknowledging effort over outcome, and consistently returning to your own measure of worth. And when you do, the world's indifference no longer diminishes you. You carry within yourself a light that no absence, no criticism, and no disbelief can extinguish. This is the turning point in the journey, the moment when external voices fade and the self speaks loudest. You become whole not because the world acknowledges you, but because you finally acknowledge yourself. And in that acknowledgement, all other forms of support, recognition, or encouragement become a bonus rather than a necessity. Failure is one of life's most relentless teachers. It arrives without invitation, often when you feel most prepared, most certain, most invested. And yet Carl Jung observed that failure is not a verdict on your character or your worth. It is a signal, a mirror, a catalyst. How you respond to failure determines whether it becomes a weight that crushes you or a fire that propels you forward. Most people treat failure as an endpoint. They interpret missteps, rejection, and collapse as proof that they are incapable. But Jung teaches a different perspective. Failure is part of the natural rhythm of growth, a necessary shadow to illuminate the path of consciousness. It is not punishment but guidance, a reflection of where effort meets limitation and where adaptation is required. To rise quickly from failure requires two things: awareness and action. Awareness involves acknowledging the loss, the mistake, the miscalculation without adding layers of blame or self-pity. It is the ability to observe the situation clearly, like a scientist studying phenomena without emotion clouding the data. Action follows naturally. Once the lesson is recognized, you adjust, adapt, and move forward. The fire of failure is converted into fuel for transformation, not ashes of regret. Jung understood the psychological mechanism behind this process. Every failure has the potential to awaken dormant capacities within the individual. The disappointment, when faced consciously, triggers a confrontation with the shadow, those traits, fears, or habits that previously limited us. By engaging with these aspects honestly, failure becomes a teacher, not a tormentor. It is the crucible in which resilience is forged, and the furnace in which independence is annealed. The human tendency, however, is to delay recovery. We linger in regret, replaying what went wrong, waiting for someone else to offer reassurance or explanation. This is the trap of dependence. To rise quickly, one must accept responsibility fully, not as a burden, but as a tool. You own the outcome, you own the lesson, and you own the next step. No one else can grant this authority. It is yours alone. Jung emphasized the importance of conscious decision-making in the wake of adversity. He believed that one must not be a passive observer of life's challenges, but an active participant in shaping the response. The failure itself is neutral. Its impact is determined entirely by the internal response. When met with courage, clarity, and decisiveness, failure ignites strength instead of despair. Rising quickly is not about rushing past pain or suppressing emotions. It is about engaging with the experience fully, extracting the insight, and then moving forward with renewed intention. It is the deliberate act of transforming energy that might otherwise be wasted in regret into movement, creation, and growth. Consider the shadow within you, the hesitation, the fear, the self-doubt. Failure exposes these elements, but it also gives you the opportunity to confront them. Each setback becomes a rehearsal for mastery, each disappointment a call to inner refinement. The swiftness of your rise is determined by your willingness to engage with your shadow without avoidance, to learn without resistance, and to act without delay. Jung often spoke of the alchemy of personal transformation, the process of turning base experiences into spiritual and psychological gold. Failure is one of the rawest forms of base material. But when approached consciously, it can be refined into wisdom, discipline, and inner power. It is fire, and fire refines rather than destroys, provided the alchemist within you is awake. Rising quickly also requires detachment from expectation. When you attach your self-worth to outcome, failure becomes unbearable. When you attach your sense of self to effort and integrity, failure becomes informative. The mind that can see the lesson in loss, the heart that can accept imperfection, and the will that can act regardless. This mind, heart, and will are unbreakable. In the psychology of rising alone, failure is not a barrier, it is the doorway. It tests your commitment to yourself, your resilience, and your capacity to transform suffering into growth. The sooner you step through that doorway, the sooner you reclaim your power. And with each rise, you build a self that no one's disbelief can topple, no circumstance can diminish, and no silence can weaken. One of the most profound lessons in rising when no one believes in you is the recognition that action cannot depend on fleeting inspiration. Carl Jung understood that the mind and the heart are not always aligned with external circumstances. There are moments when the fire of motivation flickers, when the energy you hoped would carry you forward is absent, and when emotion seems unreliable. It is in these moments that the discipline of will becomes essential. Most people wait for feeling to move them. They seek a surge of excitement, a spark of passion, or a wave of clarity before they act. And yet life rarely delivers perfect conditions. The world is indifferent, time does not pause, and circumstances are often unfavorable. If you rely solely on inspiration, you remain tethered to chance, waiting for validation that may never come. Jung believed that the conscious mind, the rational and disciplined part of the psyche, must take precedence in the face of uncertainty. Will, unlike emotion, is steady. It is deliberate, focused, and reliable. It allows you to move forward even when fear, doubt, or despair is present. Will is the tool that transforms potential into reality, that converts intention into action, and that ensures progress in the absence of feeling. Emotions are important. They inform, they guide, they enrich experience, but they are not sufficient. A fleeting sense of joy or excitement can inspire a moment of action, but without will, it evaporates. The individual who rises alone learns to act despite discomfort, uncertainty, and resistance. Action becomes a practice of mastery, not a reaction to circumstance. Jung often described the integration of opposites as central to individuation. In this context, the integration of will and emotion is essential. Emotion provides insight, will provides movement. When you act from will rather than waiting for emotion, you claim authority over your own life. You refuse to be governed by transient feelings, and instead, you govern your own trajectory with deliberate, conscious effort. The path of acting through will requires patience and repetition. It begins with small choices, completing a task you dread, speaking a truth you fear, taking a step toward a goal despite discomfort. Each deliberate act strengthens the connection between intention and execution. Over time, will becomes a muscle. The more you exercise it, the more effortless and reliable it becomes. Relying on will over emotion also fosters resilience. When setbacks occur, as they inevitably will, the individual who depends on emotion alone is derailed, shaken by disappointment or loss. The one who relies on will continues regardless. They do not need to feel inspired to act. They act because action itself is the path to growth. This is the essence of self-mastery, not waiting for conditions to be ideal, but creating forward momentum in spite of them. Jung emphasized that individuation is a lifelong process. Will is not a one-time choice. It is a continuous commitment to yourself. It is the decision each day to honor your path, to move forward even when unseen, and to persist when no one else stands beside you. Will bridges the gap between solitude and achievement, between isolation and purpose. The practice of will over emotion also reorients your relationship with suffering. Pain, fear, and doubt remain, but they no longer dictate your choices. You act not because you feel ready, but because you are committed. And in this commitment, you discover freedom, freedom from dependence, freedom from expectation, and freedom from the tyranny of circumstance. To rise when no one believes in you is to cultivate this unshakable will. It is the quiet power that turns inertia into progress, despair into opportunity, and silence into movement. It is the inner engine that drives growth, resilience, and mastery, the steadfast companion of solitude and the guiding hand of transformation. The human mind has a natural craving to be understood, seen, and acknowledged. From childhood, we seek mirrors, people who reflect our worth, our thoughts, our feelings. But Carl Jung observed that this dependence on external comprehension is both fragile and limiting. No one can fully inhabit your inner world. No one can feel the precise texture of your struggles, the intricate pattern of your thoughts, or the depth of your fears. And that is not a flaw in others, it is the nature of consciousness itself. To rise when no one believes in you is to recognize this profound truth. Everything you seek externally already exists within. Understanding, validation, courage, clarity, all of it can be accessed, cultivated, and trusted internally. The mind, when disciplined, becomes its own witness. The heart, when nurtured, becomes its own sanctuary. The soul, when acknowledged, becomes its own guide. Most people waste their energy demanding understanding from others, endlessly explaining, defending, or pleading. Jung called this the tyranny of the external psyche, the belief that your inner world is only legitimate if recognized by another. This is an illusion, a trap that keeps the individual small, dependent, and vulnerable to the shifting tides of opinion. When you turn inward, when you recognize that no one else can define your reality, a remarkable freedom emerges. You stop apologizing for your thoughts, your choices, your vision. You stop shrinking yourself to fit someone else's comprehension. You begin to inhabit your own consciousness fully, confidently, and without apology. This is not arrogance, it is self-possession. It is the acknowledgement that your mind is sovereign, and your journey is yours alone. Jung described the psyche as a vast, layered landscape, with conscious and unconscious dimensions intertwined. The unconscious contains wisdom, insight, and guidance that cannot be accessed through external conversation. By learning to listen to the internal dialogue of the self, by observing dreams, emotions, and thoughts, you discover the answers you have been seeking all along. The solitude that once felt isolating becomes fertile. The silence that once seemed empty becomes a reservoir of clarity. The realization that you do not need anyone to understand you also transforms relationships. Instead of demanding comprehension, you engage with others from a place of abundance rather than neediness. You can listen, empathize, and connect, but your self-worth and direction are no longer contingent upon their recognition. This is maturity, the capacity to participate fully in life without surrendering the authority of your own consciousness. When you internalize understanding, you also cultivate patience and resilience. The world will inevitably misunderstand you at times, judge you incorrectly, or dismiss your efforts. But when you no longer rely on external comprehension, these moments lose their power. You continue guided by the internal compass of insight, integrity, and self-trust. You act not for approval, but because you know what is necessary, meaningful, and true. Jung wrote that every individual carries both light and shadow, conscious and unconscious elements. You do not need anyone else to reconcile these within you. The work is your own. By engaging in introspection, self-reflection, and conscious decision-making, you cultivate the authority to navigate life independently. The shadows no longer terrify, the doubts no longer paralyze, because you have become your own guide through the terrain of the psyche. To rise when no one believes in you is, ultimately, to stop seeking external validation for your internal reality. Everything you need, understanding, guidance, strength, is already within. The world may remain silent, indifferent, or critical. And yet you stand unshaken, because you have learned to listen to the wisdom of your own mind. In this space, the illusion of dependence dissolves. You no longer live in anticipation of recognition, praise, or support. You live in the certainty of your own presence, the confidence of your own knowledge, and the calm assurance that comes from knowing that the inner world is sufficient. And when you realize this, you are finally free from the sway of opinion, free from the need for approval, and free to rise with the quiet power of someone who has discovered that the universe within is infinite, unwavering, and complete. As we draw this journey to a close, it is worth pausing to reflect on what it truly means to rise when no one believes in you. The path is neither simple nor comfortable. It asks for courage, patience, and the willingness to confront the deepest corners of your mind and heart. Yet, as Carl Jung reminds us, this is precisely where transformation occurs, not in the applause of others, but in the silent, steady work of self-realization. You have explored loneliness and discovered it as a teacher rather than a curse. You have learned to stop seeking emotional comfort from others, cultivating instead the ability to soothe, validate, and empower yourself. You have faced the allure of the victim ego and replaced complaint with conscious choice. You have claimed your own validation, transforming reliance into sovereignty. You have encountered failure and learned to rise swiftly, converting setbacks into fire that fuels growth. You have acted from will over emotion, creating momentum even in the absence of inspiration. And you have realized that understanding need not come from the outside. Everything you seek already exists within. Each of these lessons is a step toward wholeness, a step toward individuation, a step toward the realization that you are enough, entirely and completely, without the endorsement of the world. This is the essence of Jung's wisdom, that the power to rise resides within the human psyche, patiently waiting to be acknowledged, nurtured, and trusted. As you carry these teachings forward, remember that this is not a final destination. The work of becoming your own source of light is ongoing, a lifelong practice. There will be moments of doubt, moments when the world seems cold, and moments when the weight of isolation presses hard. Yet in each of these moments, you can return inward, draw from the reservoir of your inner strength, and rise again. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Let this be your guide. The darkness within is not to be feared, suppressed, or denied. It is the source of insight, the canvas for growth, and the foundation for your radiant inner light. By facing it, understanding it, and integrating it, you claim the authority and freedom that comes from being fully yourself. Rising when no one believes in you is not an act of defiance toward the world. It is an act of alignment with yourself. It is a declaration that your existence, your effort, and your consciousness are sufficient. It is the quiet, unwavering realization that you do not need permission, recognition, or validation to thrive. You are the architect of your inner life, the keeper of your own fire, and the source of your own illumination. As you leave this space of reflection, carry with you a profound truth. The world may never fully see your worth, may never fully understand your journey, may never offer the acknowledgement you long for. And yet, you are whole, radiant, and unshakable. You have discovered the secret that Jung sought to illuminate, that the only approval, guidance, and validation you need is the one you cultivate within. Sit with this truth. Feel its depth. Allow it to nourish your being. And know that in this self-possession lies the greatest freedom, the deepest strength, and the most enduring light. Rise, not because someone stands beside you, but because you have become your own unwavering source of light. And in that light, the world may notice, or it may not, but you will have found the power that never fades, the guidance that never wavers, and the peace that cannot be taken away. This is your journey, your sovereignty, your illumination. This is the art of rising when no one believes in you. This is the path of the self-realized, the resilient, and the unconquerable. This is the wisdom of Carl Jung, alive within you, waiting for your recognition, ready to guide you into the depths of your own inner light.